You're listening to Radio Mayapur with the best devotional, meditation, kirtan music, and inspirational podcast. This is Radio Mayapur.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Here is night. We are in Tokyo, Japan. This is Gangadhar, your host for Radio Mayapur, which is a link to your heart. And today we are very fortunate, and I am very enthralled to introduce you, my old friend here in Tokyo, Japan, which is a very beautiful place, Radhika Raman Prabhu, who is born in Czechoslovakia in March in 1965, and he studied from when he's very young age this music in conservatory in Czechoslovakia.
Yes.
And he studied percussion and piano. He was playing piano from when he was a very young child. From he was 6 years old, he started to play the piano. And so welcome to our podcast, Radhika Raman Prabhu.
Thank you, Ganga Prabhu.
It's wonderful. As I told you last year also that I wanted to do this podcast with you, but unfortunately you did not have enough time for me, or you were very busy, or I stayed too short time. But now I caught you, and here we are. Tokyo, Japan. So tell us a little bit about your life history. Like you were born in Czechoslovakia. At the time it was Czechoslovakia, now it became what?
Czech Republic, Slovak Republic.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your family, your upbringing. What was your life before you joined this movement?
Now, first of all, I want to thank Ganga Prabhu to invite me here, because Ganga is like a big Ganga. He's like a river of big friend. He's the mountain of sweetness. So it feels like, that we can be actually authentic in this discussion.
Why not?
We don't need to be too much, try to become impressive spiritually.
Nothing. We are what we are. That's how you.
We want to be.
As you get.
I think that the most important thing in life is to be honest about everything, and sincere with ourselves, with our whatever we're going through in life, and be grateful.
Absolutely.
From moment to moment, try to be grateful for everything we get. So yes, so thank you very much for inviting me, and that you're doing this with me, this podcast about my creative life.
Nice.
I have, you asked me how I start music. When I was a kid, my mom was a horde director. So my
chorus director?
Chorus. Yeah. So she had now she's 80 years old. She had many generations of kids who are like already professional singers, and they went through university, conservatories, and musical academies. And so I have in my youth, there was a musical all around me, everywhere, all the time, at all times.
And you like it?
And actually, when I was a kid, I was really into hockey.
Huh.
So I had a bipolar life. Half of it was music and art, and half of it was
very active.
It was I went to a high school. Middle school, which was designed by, at that time, Czechoslovakian government to produce professional hockey players. So we were before we went to school every day, from 5 a.m. we were on the ice. Every single day.
Hockey, not
ice hockey, yeah, left defense.
Wow, that's heavy, That's heavy.
So, I was a really serious hockey player from when I was 6 until I was 14.
Amazing.
And then I had a concussion and a couple of accidents, and so I decided clearly that I will pursue the musical part of my life and become a musician. And my mom wanted me to be she wanted me to be a pianist, like concert pianist or something, and I was more interested in jazz and weird music out of any order of classical music. So I started to play rebelliously drums.
Wow.
And I became relatively okay. So I got accepted to conservatory, and there I studied, classical music and classical training of the pursuing the future of becoming a percussionist in symphony orchestra, not as a drummer, but I was playing drum set already before I went there, jazz and, different things,
Nice.
and my passion, essentially at the beginning was not really pop music. My first album that I got was Oscar Peterson Jazz Trio. That was my first CD that I saved up when I was like 12 or 11. And then we had this like a public school, music school, which were, they were practicing, training people to become students for conservatory or, regular just people who interested in generic art performance. I had a trio of pianists, and I played drums, and it was upright bassist, and we were trying to play some kind of jazz at that time.
Nice.
So in conservatory, I was, I became a serious student of music, and also I became very, kind of distracted youth simultaneously, like most kids would be.
Yeah, naturally.
Right. And so I studied conservatory. I got thrown out of the conservatory after 2 years.
You are the rebellious type of person.
And then I became a student of. It's a school in Czech Republic which produced instruments. It's called Amaty Kraslice. It's very, very common, very famous, a middle class supplier of horn instruments and clarinets and drums and different things like that.
Amazing.
And so I went to that school because I couldn't go back to any conservatories after my,
Why did they throw you out?
They threw me out for, I was really in love with music, and in fact the first year, in the summer when I was like 14, approaching 15 years old, and the first year they gave me a gig to go to play with a chamber orchestra for a place called Charles Bad. That's a place where Amadeus Mozart used to live.
Wow.
And they are people with different disorders go to drink water and getting therapies.
Nice.
Therapeutic kind of environment.
Right.
And we had 2 sessions, afternoon and evening, to play classical music, 32 pieces chamber.
Wow.
And I was the timpani player, snare drum. I was the percussion player for that gig. And that's how I get spoiled by material energy. Just take me out of I started doing all the wrong things as a student right there.
Naturally.
And then,
everybody starts to experiment with different things.
Exactly.
That way.
Yeah. So, I went to study in this school for becoming a technician for musical instruments. But instead of that, because I was a relatively okay drummer, they asked me to play in their orchestra, which constantly traveled. So I never went to school, actually.
Amazing.
I was on the road,
learning on the way
with this orchestra, and they played like a kind of a swing, brass pieces and jazz, and kind of vintage pop music,
So let's
very
say
professional.
this was more appealing to you than just orchestra.
There was like a kind of preparation for idea of becoming a professional drummer or something. And then I had excruciating desire to go back to school. And I was thinking I want to go to Berklee, College of Music in Boston, because all the guys that I loved, all the music, Jaco Pastorius, Mike Stern, Pat Metheny, and John Scofield, and Gary Barton, and Joe Zawinul, and all these people that we listened to jazz and fusion music, they went to the school. So Miroslav Vitoš is the first upright bass player from Weather Report.
Yeah.
He was Czech. Jan Hammer, he was a Czech pianist with also a lot of people, Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Yes.
So I really wanted to get out. And when, I tried first to go to France, but at that time, Czechoslovakia was really dangerous to try to cross the border without getting killed.
Why was it dangerous? Oh, because of the war?
No, because it was, communist. So the borders with West was being protected by You know,
People could not go out.
yeah, you cannot. So we actually tried to go to France, and we couldn't get out because of army, because obligation to the army. I was like 17 at that time.
Yeah, you had to go to the army.
And
Was 2 years service at the time?
Hmm?
2 years service or 1 year?
for me, it was 2, because I was not part of any academical,
Right.
situation at that
Yeah.
time. So I would have to go to army. So we make a plan to. I actually had 1 year. I had a gig, playing in a bar, a night gig, afternoon night at Charlesbad, the city where I used to play classical music.
Right.
And then with one friend of musician who was really big fan of Mahavishnu Orchestra, he said, I want to go to also study Berkeley. So we decided that we will like trick the communists. And we went to Yugoslavia for a vacation in summer. And then we like disappeared from the trip, organized trip, and we were hitchhiking to the border with Austria. And then we crossed the Austrian Alps to Austria.
Amazing. That's amazing.
And in Austria, we spent the first night in some kind of like, shelter. And the next morning we went to American Embassy,
Wow.
straightforward in Vienna. Knock on the door and say, we just escaped from Czech Republic. And they took us very seriously. They accommodated us. There was a camp for emigration refugees about 30 kilometers from Vienna called Treiskirchen. It was an old castle, rigged for all the refugees. There was like 3,000 refugees from Albania, Bulgaria,
From
Romania, everywhere.
there.
It was mad. It was like incredible. It was one of the worst places you can imagine. And I had a family in Munich, in Bavaria, in Germany. So my cousin came with a car. They put me on the back of the car. They covered me with blankets. They drove me into Germany illegally. So I stayed with my family there, and being a recipient to the Western culture for the first time in my life. Because communism, I don't think anybody can imagine what communism actually is.
Tell us a little bit about that experience of communism, because we don't have idea. So
Communism, it's a very conformational society where no one is allowed to perform their best. So everybody try to do least and get the most.
Oh.
And so it swims in bureaucracy like Russia, similar.
Yes.
And my family actually had some kind of history of business. My grandfather, he was factory owner, and from my mother's side, there's 1,200 years of generation recorded of like people who were in possession of some kind of authority, So we were not easy. My mom was teaching in the school, but she was really ostracized. And for me to get the conservatory was also a huge challenge. We had to have like a contact somewhere.
Yeah. Connections.
And you had to pay a little bit of some kind of bakshish to etc. So it was a very like the conservatory, for example. I couldn't play jazz. It was illegal to play jazz. We were secretly jamming with some kind of whatever it was.
What are you doing?
Some harmony, and the professor from who really didn't like me. He was like after me, like.
What are you doing?
So I start to get these minuses from behavior, and so this is a symptom of communism. That there's no really acceleration of any excellence anywhere. It's all gray. There's no colors in architecture. If you see communistic era, there's no colors in architecture. They're just kind of like a panel, massive housing for small apartments, cement, and
I've been in Russia.
Gray,
so
and so something really good about communism, which I remember, that people were, because there was not really exposure to corruption, like like the greed, the active accumulative.
Everybody gets everything, whatever they need, minimum. Whatever.
So there was a really, and I cannot really judge if America, in 70s or 80s were also sweet. I don't know, But communism, in sense of relationships and the people, how they treat each other, it was, very personal, more personal than I can remember. When I went to America for the first time, I realized that everybody was looking about money. And there was a lot of attention to taxes and money. And if you had money, then you was something. If you didn't have money, you was nothing. It was like kind of based on that psychology. So I quickly became disappointed in that.
Of course.
Because I was waiting for this freedom, And of course, there was I saw like King Crimson for the first time in my life. I saw Weather Report for the first time in my life. I saw Mahavishnu Orchestra. I saw I met Zappa personally.
Friend Zappa?
Yeah. If you tell me honestly, I went to America. One of my biggest musical inspiration and influence on me was Zappa, Frank Zappa. His classical music and all his music that he produced. We used to, in conservatory, listening to it like something, sacred, like something really amazing.
He actually started with classical music, and then he went into that
abstract,
just to make money because he survived.
He's a classical, deranged
music.
Comedian.
Yeah.
With an incredibly, high IQ. And
I met him in 1975 in Copenhagen. He came
really?
For a concert, and I spoke to him.
Really? Yeah. Same thing, like that,
And I told him, why don't you come to Italy? He said, I don't know. But he was a nice guy.
Yeah, for me, Zappa was really important in music. He was very non-conventional, very, he was really free artist. Basically he was a classical composer of classical modern music.
Sure.
Edgar Varese, Anton Webern, these kind of people with abstract music. And he was actually, before he started to work on any modern music and blues, especially, he was writing scores of classical music as a kid. He was 18 and he already composed music. Amazing. And he was into choreography, so he would actually write beautiful scores. And some of these artists, like the percussion player, for example, Duke. What is his name? A pianist.
Wellington?
Duke?
Wellington?
No. George Duke.
Oh, George Duke.
He's a pianist, famous jazz pianist. So he used to, he was showing these scores they get from Zappa. They were like, piece of art.
Beautiful art design.
And, Zappa was beautiful actually because he was really spiritual. Yes. And I think I was always telling people I became Hare Krishna because of Zappa, which is really, really weird. No, everybody's like, why? Who's Zappa, that guy who ate something on a stage,
Stage.
No, Zappa was very sophisticated. He never took drugs. I never took drugs in my life, ever. No marijuana, nothing.
Amazing.
Not any, because of him. Because he was really against the altered consciousness concept. He was like into, if you want to achieve something, then work hard, concentrate, a lot of practice. He was workaholic. He was really into like achieving purity in the skill and into the craft,
Amazing.
So I really was inspired by that. And we talk about how you become Krishna conscious. Overnight Sensation was and One Size Fits All. Those two records, they represent his part of life when he studies Zazen. Zen. One size fits all, and so because of him, I get a Zen books and I start, reading Zen koans and poetry. And that's how I got into like surrealism. André Breton was the thinker of European surrealism, and the people like Salvador Dali, René Magritte, Duchamp, Chagall, people like Man Ray, a great famous photographer, and people like Luis Buñuel, the filmmaker. So this was for me actually the kind of a transition bridge into spirituality. Amazing. Because there was surrealism, like abstract,
start to see
hyper-realistic, because in America I became like really disappointed.
Yeah.
Like with the conventional domestic life, I couldn't imagine myself just going to work I got a job immediately. Like I got a job in a gas station. I became friend with the owner, and he put me on his yacht. He gave me his yacht to stay there and take care of his yacht. He paid me to live on a yacht in Boston
Harbor.
Boston Harbor, exactly. And so that was interesting, And then, but I was actually associated with a lot of Czech people in the beginning of Boston trip.
Mm-hmm.
I got a scholarship to Berkeley by arrangement of the transition to Boston.
Mm-hmm.
They would assign me a person who would assist me to get bank loans. And I said to myself, okay, that's fantastic. I will take 1 year to study English before I go to school because I didn't speak English really well. And I cannot imagine go to harmony or contrapunct, without or go to a class of some kind of musical theory without understanding English,
Yeah.
So I went to Connecticut. I decided to just go anywhere on the map where there's no Czech people. So I can
You're forced to learn.
So when I'm forced. So I did that. I went to Connecticut and I ended up in Richfield, Danbury, which is like completely weird town. I just went there in a bus, and first time from the bus, there was a restaurant called Nina's with Italian owner. And I told him, I just came, I am like refugee. And I was like 18 or something, 18 and a half, like a kid. And, he said, I have a friend who owns a painting company. He's Czech. I said, oh my God, So I end up working for another Czech guy, actually, unfortunately. But I got immediately, a rental in his restaurant on top.
Nice.
And I, for 1 year, I was painting. And within 3 months, I have my own business. I was doing like a contracting for painting jobs outside, inside, and doing few, things around the house and stuff.
Nice.
And then when I was, I was practicing music, and I was really studying yoga and meditation. I became vegetarian back to doing horrible things, then become vegetarian, just back to doing all the nonsense.
Up and down.
And I took some music classes from some kind of a legendary person. His name is Link Chamberlain, who was a bebop guitarist. And he was telling me, you don't need to go to Berkeley. I can teach you the concept of harmony. You don't need to go to that. I can teach you in 2 lessons what Berkeley will never teach you for 3, in practical way, how you play, music.
Wow.
And so I studied with him a little bit. And then I decided to go back to Boston. And I really seriously wanted to go to Berkeley and start studying music. And I met the devotees.
But Radhika Raman Prabhu, let's step back a little bit.
Okay.
What your family taught when you left? I mean, your mother. I don't know if you have brothers and sisters.
My mom,
father.
She went from Czech Republic to Germany. She was sent by the Czech government to bring me back.
Oh my God.
And I said, no way in hell, I'm coming back. I was 18 actually already.
So already
I was approaching
major.
it would be a problem if I would be like underage, then she would get
naturally.
And actually I get 10 years jail. They send me they send me the result of the court case. And then when Václav Havel 2001 became president, they sent me amnesty. Another letter.
Nice.
You don't need to go to jail.
Cool.
So, I was like, I left my family when I was 14.
Yeah.
I went to conservatory, which is about 30 kilometers from where I was living. Mm-hmm. So I lived alone. I went on weekends. I went to come back home
and spend some time with
and I didn't have very good relationship with my father, unfortunately.
Why?
I don't know. The intellect, there was no really intellectual support.
What was he doing?
He was drilling for oil contractors in Libya. He was a metal engineer.
Wow.
So he did things like, he was teaching, in a factory. He was teaching like science of metals.
Yeah.
He was not really professor or teacher. He was actually assisting in a factory in production.
Practical.
He was a technician.
Nice.
And he built, like, for example, boats out of metal for people, you know.
Wow.
Or he the time when I was living in Czech Republic, he was in Libya for 2 years.
So that's why you didn't develop. What about brothers and sisters?
When I was leaving, I had a brother. When I was leaving, I was 18, so my brother was 8.
Very small.
And then I have another brother who was born 10 years before him. So we are 3 brothers, 10 years apart.
They're 10 years apart.
Yeah.
So not much relationship.
Well,
Some
there
kind
is
of
a relationship now.
but
You know, we
not because-
recovered something gradually, but you know, when I became devotee, you know,
They lost
I actually, you know, there was an old school, like you give up everything, you
you just
sell
surrender
your
everything.
instruments. I remember the 57 Strat that I had, you know, I left behind, you know, and I had an SG Gibson, which was really dear, you know, and then I traded for a seminar with Saraputa in Gitaragare, you know, pay for the seminar. And so, but, you know, there was a kind of very interesting part also to just surrender everything. Narayana Swami was, at that time, he was the resident brahmachari, sannyasi to become very shortly afterwards.
In which place?
Boston. Boston, Massachusetts, 72 Commonwealth Avenue. That's where I first went to Sunday Feast. After I met the devotees in Park Street, they invited me. And Haridananda Das Goswami was giving lecture.
Wow.
And I had a conversation with him about serialism. And he really blew my mind, like with his
Knowledge and
intelligence and with accommodating all the angles, philosophical angles on things. We talk about Dali. And I know about Dali because I studied Dali in quite a depth about like paranoid criticism and the way how the surrealists created art through projection of mind and different things like that.
Amazing.
You know? And so that was actually the inspirational step why I became really committed to keep being interested in Krishna consciousness because of this Sunday feast. And so I moved to the temple like within 2 weeks. And
but let me ask you, who was the first devotee you spotted you or you met? You remember him?
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
Actually, there was a devotee who was not living in a temple no longer.
Of course.
The first person that when I stayed in a temple for the first time, his name is Jiva Goswami, and he is disciple of Satsur Maharaj. There was also another devotee called Muktavanya who is still in Boston right now. He was in Gitanagari also for a while. They were brahmacharis at that time. Keshihanta was temple president. Mother Devaki was the wife of temple president and head pujari. They living right now in Alacha, Florida. Madhava Das, another Satsuru Das Goswami disciple, he was the head cook. And they were Chaitanya Nitai, who was the Sankirtan leader. And there was also a Ram Roy Prabhu, who you know probably. Ram Roy Prabhu from New York City. He was at that time brahmachari, but to become Sankirtan leader. And then me and him, and I became like the book distributor in Boston. I had actually the kind of period when I wanted to be initiated by Haridananda Das Goswami, and I went to see him, meet him in Florida. But then Lokanath Swami came through Boston one time, and he lead his kirtan.
Whoa.
And he blew me to pieces completely. It was like the universe roars, and like the just emotional experience,
Amazing.
Tsunami, of greatness.
I can imagine.
And so I said to the authorities, and I was a very difficult guy. I have to say that they throw me out of the temple after like the first period of 3 weeks or 1 month living there. Because I was Zen Buddhist at that time. I was doing yoga quite well. I was vegetarian on my own. I was very austere, kind of like living on a salad. And I saw devotees who are like eating so much prasada in the morning. I said, you're all corrupted.
You guys are
why you're like everybody's fat. I was thinking, it cannot be, like some yoga, society. What is this?
Prasada was so powerful.
Yeah, and and so I eventually, of course, when you live in a temple, you realize what the secrets of prasadam, right?
Of course.
And so we progressed into the time when my plates were like 25 centimeters up to the ceiling on feasts. Yeah, so there was because I was inspired by Lokanath Swami, I came near Maharaj, and he said, if you want to, you can join the Padayatra in India.
Right.
And then
Which year it was, this one?
This was 1990 something. The first time I went to the temple was 1988. And then when I rejoined the temple, there was like a year and a half after that, because they throw me out of the temple.
Why they throw you out?
I was like very disturbing, like questionnaire for every speaker.
Yeah.
Like I would literally prepare myself to write some question.
Who is this
nobody
asked.
Answer. So they were like, oh, this guy is here again. I don't want to give class, or he's just he's here to disturb. And
but you were inquisitive. You were sincerely.
Well, I was both. I was very inquisitive. I was looking for authenticity. I was very rebellious, and simultaneously puffed up, and Mayavadi, drenched in Mayavad philosophy.
And all
so I was discovering all the idea of understanding what the deities are. I was, for example, when I was reading, the Bhagavad Gita at the beginning, I was reading it with like a Mayavad concept in my head,
Right. God is
I was rewriting
the Bhagavad Gita,
writing my own version of things, and they were saying, you cannot do that. Prabhupada say it like this.
Yeah. So you were a kind of controversial person.
No, not controversial. Just really kind of. I love the devotees. I'm telling you, when I was coming back from Padayatra, I went on Padayatra for 1 year, walking from Boston to Miami, and that's literally like you go through New York State, Massachusetts, New York State, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Florida.
Stuff.
And in the middle of the winter, we went through. We started like we started like a late fall. So we went through literally winter through North South Carolina. The Virginia becomes warmer. Florida becomes. But there was a time when you just get out of the bus at the beginning. Half of the trip there was a bus with 30 devotees walking. Then they had to delete the bus because the temple president of Padayatra left his body, malaria in India.
Wow.
So they make a new president of Padayatra, and they reduced it into a tent version of that, with the 2 oxen imported from Alachua. Nakula and Sahadev, those 2 oxen. And so we walk, pitching a tent and a cart, and Nitai Gaura Sundar deities, very similar to deities here in Japan. And so there was also esoteric, extremely amazing trip, And when I was coming back to Boston, I remember the trip, the ride from New York City, because I also ended up staying in New York City doing distribution for a year before I went back to Boston. And I remember, like, I was literally crying coming back to Boston. And when the smell of the temple inside, the kitchen.
You start to remember.
No, I mean, there was I went through some serious transformations in Boston.
Okay.
The first 3 months, I washed dishes. I didn't go outside of the temple. I was listening Sariputa's Origins and washing dishes. And, going to classes, Narendra Swami's classes. So, and Maharaj was living in Boston Temple as a resident sannyasi, so he was always there. And it was really,
I'm sure that scrape your heart, purify your heart after washing the pot, become more humble and give you more.
It was because
devotional service is very powerful.
I was not easy bhakta.
Of course.
I was not easy bhakta.
Of course.
And but the thing is that the more difficulties I went through, the more deeper love I had for those devotees who carried that responsibility with me,
Tolerate you.
And I remember that, when I had some good years of book distribution in Japan, like when we did really big, I remember that I was waking up in the morning and I was literally, I had names of devotees, who were part of my constitution, spiritual constitution. They were, contributors to shape me up into whatever I was becoming, And that was the real empowerment, actually, in my spirit. I believe totally that, we are on a journey and, Krishna is speaking through different devotees and the devotees get their posts assisting other devotees. And it's a very natural, orchestrated by Krishna internally, externally. And everybody becomes part of your history. And,
Absolutely.
And we have to be grateful.
Absolutely.
And we are depending on that gratitude and being connected to those roots, because if you uproot any of that,
then you're finished.
Then you become something different, and you're not anymore with what's given by the mercy of Prabhupada.
That's a beautiful thought. But let me ask you how you end up in Japan, because that's another story, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How from America.
Well, we get a Sankirtan party in Boston with Ram Roy being the Sankirtan leader. There was Ram Roy.
Yeah.
Why are you driving this way? Like he was a very heavy Sankirtan leader. You stupid. How many times I told you don't drive here? It was another kind of extreme,
Yeah.
And we also, Ram and me, we were best friends. We even end up in Japan doing Sankirtan at night together, reading Bhagavatam in the middle of the night somewhere in the... Anyway, so we, the temple went through some troubles with a court case.
Boston.
Yeah. They had some kind of, issues, and they almost were selling the temple at that, it was 91. And the devotees from Lokanath Maharaj's camp, they were going to come to Japan to distribute books. They were collecting Lakshmi, for the North American temples.
Right.
And I said to my temple president, I can also go to Japan and help, because I can get association with my godbrothers. So it was like half of it was like I can help, but half of it was I can be a little independent and get some adventure going, So I went to Japan, and I was like a mediocre book distributor in America. I could have I did the tours, summer tours. I did everyday Sankirtan in New York. But they were always like better distributors than me. But in Japan, somehow or other, I was really fit
number
for this. Not number one, but I was like number one in America for a few years, for North America, because of the books distributed in Japan. So it's kind of unfair, compatible, if competition. Because I was half a year distributing books in America, half a year in Japan. And we did books in a nighttime instead of day. We started like 8, finishing 1 o'clock in the morning.
Why? There wasn't a reason?
Because at that time, the night spots were easier to approach people. And also there was no woman on the street. There was just a gentleman. And nobody was really drunk or anything. They are like, relaxed. Japan is very hectic, intense place. Too many people on the street. Everybody's running. So at that, when I tried to stop somebody in the middle of the day, I was like, wow, how you do that? You need a really good pair of sports shoes, running after people, And so, Maharaj invented this night Sankirtan. And first, only the Matajis were allowed
Which Maharaj?
No, Kavichandra Swami.
Kavichandra Maharaj. Okay.
No, he was the sum and total of Sankirtan here at that time, training everybody, take care of BBT, take care of everything, So we also very grateful to Maharaj, for everything he did for us. He trained me in Japan, definitely. I got assigned to, I started distributing books with Nitai immediately. Me and Nitai was the partnership from 91.
Because he spoke Japanese.
No, actually I didn't have to really. I really realized that I have been doing better than a lot of devotees because I didn't speak Japanese. That's why I never learn Japanese language, because I didn't want to lie to people I don't speak Japanese. I would say, Nihongo skoshi gomenasai, and that's it. Suddenly, you're gaijin, you're like a, person from outside, and you are allowed to do a lot more things in conversation. if you start speak Japanese, you have to adjust to the cultural, like dynamics of their culture.
But you were speaking to them in English.
Well, I memorized lines.
Of course.
Like if you take this book, your heart will be touched or something. Kokoro no naka ni yorogobi ka dekimasu. Or kore tetsugaku, it's a philosophy, and dozo yonde kudasai, dozo skoshi osaise onegashimasu, dozo skoshi kifu onegashimasu. 3 ways to ask for donation. And bow down, to everyone. So actually, I realized the art of book distribution in Japan was authenticity. If you chant good rounds and if you bow sincerely, everybody responded to that. So I just get into that, just preparing myself. I used to read CC on the street with a loop head. So I didn't see anything except the pages of the CC, and with the kartals, like seeing the Bengali.
Yeah.
And and then I just went on the street, like unleashed the
energy,
the inspiration. I remember Harinamananda used to just lock himself in a van for like 3 hours reading CC. Then he just unleashed himself outside and distributed like 100 books or something in 3 hours.
Amazing.
So yeah.
So then from the time you remained in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, because I was just a young devotee, right? And Japan was like kind of nostalgic place. Like it would seem to, when you get up from the Tokyo Narita airport, that you step into like a moon or something.
Different planet.
Another planet.
It's a different planet. Yes, true.
Literally, you feel
different.
Like, I don't feel it anymore because I'm here all the time, right? For 35 years, But
let's say the culture of the Japanese is very, very deep and very, very subtle. At the same time, you feel like they have some kind of, respectful culture, even amongst themselves.
Yeah.
The way they're dealing with each other. I see the children go to school with the mother, and the kids play and talk. All very kind of.
Yeah,
there is no like fear like in the West. You walk around and people feel like, what's going on?
We used to when I was doing Sekitan half year in America for the summer tours, and then before the December marathon, like in early November, we went back to Japan. And when I came back to Japan, I was saying to people, listen, this guy works he's like operating on some kind of mini crane.
Yeah.
And people like that in America, they're ruffians, right? Some kind of guy there with like a,
but this guy,
and then this guy, he looks like he comes from office or something, they look really, I would say they advanced or something, very, very, very cultured, sensitive, like,
clean, everything.
And there's this incredibly embedded. Because I did Zen before, I studied Suzuki Roshi's Zazen when I was a kid, really seriously. So I said, I was thinking, I was always saying, all Japanese people, they have a Zen heart.
Yes.
Even the Japanese devotees.
Yes.
Like you can say, what is the soul? And they don't understand. They say the heart or the mind. What is the difference? They don't get, in Japan, it's very difficult for them to understand. Difference between the mind and the heart.
Same.
It's a one thing.
One thing, yeah.
So they live, the culture of, like especially I always enjoyed the Senkitan or exchange with Japan outside of Tokyo. We went to Osaka. It was already double Senkitan, double time. Then we went to Hiroshima or Fukuoka. It was triple time. And it was like literally you could do 3 times more. Just because the people are sweeter,
nice. Yes.
And there's more village, there's more, now it's already the age of, iPhones and, AI, and it's a different story completely. But even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, there was there's a lot of, it's really just amazing. We traveled, let's say, with Kauchana Maharaj stayed somewhere 3 days, living in a capsule hotel. And we would just do intense Sankirtan from the morning until night, until you drop dead. Then go to sauna at night with Maharaj, drinking juice. And, it's you living in some kind of plane trip, some kind of, you're like in a spaceship.
That's amazing.
And in the morning, you wake up, you chant rounds. I used to try to get more authentic with some more fanatical way of chanting. So I had this gong. I would go from the hotel outside, in the park, Hare Krishna, bang, getting into, extreme concentration.
Amazing.
And that was amazing fun, like those years when we traveled. We never really lived in any temples. We just only stayed, like I remember I stayed a year in Fukuoka in hotel and distributing books all year. Or stayed in Osaka, stayed in Kagoshima, Miyazaki, those small cities, 2-3 months with my own deities. And, it's like, it was really a great thing. Sengidan is, definitely the heart of Srila Prabhupada's movement.
Absolutely.
And
because
despite
it's
of the
one-to-one personal relationship when you meet people and you can...
it's really like a terminal for internal realization, and also of defining all the junk that you got inside, the anarthas.
Become purified. But I want to ask you if you ever went to the deep south of Japan. There are many small islands.
No, I never went.
Nobody
I
ever
went to Okinawa first time
Okay.
2 years ago with Kachina Swami. Interesting.
Because there are many, many islands, which I was checking today on the map, and then I was thinking, who lives in these places? Really in the middle of the ocean, very close to Taiwan, but it's part of Japan.
Yeah.
There are many, many
These
islands.
small islands, yeah.
Small
Yeah. There's Snake Island somewhere there.
Yeah, nobody goes there. Because
And there's some interesting places.
Some
Yeah.
far out place. And south is beautiful. South
We spend time on Sankirtan. I know very well the Shibuya station.
Of course.
Or I know Tokyo Station.
Yes.
Or I know Kabukicho. Or I know in Osaka, Namba Station, Umeda Station. I know very well Dotonbori. I don't know those small islands.
Yeah,
For me, the island was Dotonbori, or
Yeah. But let me ask you one question. Did you ever have any meeting with the priests of this big, huge Buddhist temple? And because I saw some temple we went with Maharaj, they're doing Jagya like we do it.
Yeah, in Narita.
There's big, huge drum. You can feel boom, boom, boom. So did you ever meet any of these people who were also spiritualists in one way?
Well, my friend, a producer, musical progressive rock keyboard player, and I was working with him.
He's a Japanese.
No, he's Australian.
Australian, okay.
But he's a Mormon, dedicated Mormon.
Oh, Mormon, yeah.
Who was living in Hare Krishna temple in Australia,
wow.
in a Gold
Gold Coast. So yeah, there is
Brisbane. There's some kind of farm there.
Yeah, there's a farm.
And he left the establishment for some personal reasons, and he went to Japan, and he was interested in Zen. And he was coming to our temple to, for classes. He was interested.
Our temple here in Funabori?
No.
Which temple?
In Higashi Nakano at that time.
At that time.
In the beginning of Higashi Nakano.
Fine.
And he actually just came from Vrindavan, where he recorded his CD.
Wow.
His band is called Myriad. It's like kind of Porcupine Tree or Pink Floyd-ish thing. And so we met and we recorded like a mini album together, 5 songs.
Nice.
And so he progressively over the years, he became more involved with Zen temples. And he actually became serious follower of the Soto Zen establishment in Chiba. And they gave him his own temple in Hiroshima Hills.
Amazing.
Like beautiful, huge, abandoned temple with like 2 members from the community, And he was working on the gardens, doing the Zen meditation on working, creating the environment, a beautiful environment with trees and gardens, designs.
Yeah, nice.
And, so he was telling me about the difference between living in a monastery in Kyoto, which trains people in Zazen meditations, and then living in a regular temples. Totally different 2 worlds. Temple is an ordinary place where people perform ceremonies like we do, yagyas, pujas,
People
different
come to worship.
some kind of ancestor worship, and the priests get paid a lot of money. So those people who do that, they're very rich. The temples are very rich. Wedding in Japan, it's like $20,000 for the temple given, gift donation. We do it for $1,000 or less in ISKCON temple.
Yeah.
Right. So that's they don't practice Zazen actually mostly in Japan. The regular temples, they don't practice the doctrines. You have different Buddhism. You have Zen, which is two, Soto and Rinzai. Rinzai is the samurai. The Zen, which is embraced by the martial artists in history, like samurais and karate people, and they practice in dojo. And then Soto Zen is more like for the priests, for people into philosophy and then you have Joroshinshu, Nichiren-shu, Nichiren Shoshu, Tendai-shu, different forms of. We have Mahayana and Hinayana, Soto, Daijo, Bukkyo, two different, those two Buddhisms. And so Japanese Buddhism generally is not really practiced well. The Zen in Kyoto, those monasteries, they do. And my friend actually, he gave me a report when the first time his training, you're gonna blow your socks. His entry, he had to stay in front of the temple for 2 days to beg to enter the temple, like traditionally.
Yes.
No sleeping. And then when he entered the temple, they let him to sleep. Then next day, they another test of sincerity and surrender. They force him to eat food, a lot of food, until he puked. And then he forced him to eat his own puke as a test of his surrender.
That's heavy, heavy test.
So he survived about 5 days, the first entry into the Zen monastery in Kyoto. And then, then it took him a year before he had the courage to go back again. And then he started to complain about other things. He say, we go through the discipline. We eat once a day. You stay in Zazen for 3 hours in the morning.
Zazen means?
Means sitting in Zazen, like a sitting in meditation, straight. There are people with a stick.
They beat you if
they don't beat you, but they
touch you.
They slap you, if you fall asleep or if you're not allowed to be in pain or spasm. It doesn't, you have to sit. And, throughout the day, they don't rest. They sleep only 3 hours at night. And then rest of it is just meditation and eating once a day. And you have 5 minutes to eat. So I saw him twice. After 1 month of this routine, he lost half of his body. He's skinny, looking stoned, literally really going through some serious discipline. And so he was telling me that finally I find courage and way to stay for 3 months. And he said, everybody here is at 20s. They already designated people who go there to train to become leaders in the temples outside. And they all kids. And, they practice discipline. And at night they go to hostess clubs. What? And they drink alcohol. No. So, and smoking, so he was like, it's kind of really deep, but it's a joke because they actually go drink afterwards, Crazy. We used to meet them distributing books. I used to remember monks in black robes entering, hostess club. It's part of the culture in Japan. It's not like something unbelievable, It's weird.
What about these people that chant this mantra, Rengekyo, or Om Mani Padme Om? They have different mantras.
Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is Nichiren-shu. You have Nichiren-shu, Nichiren-shoshu. Then you have Soka Gakkai. Those modernized versions of that.
Because I have a friend in Rome who practiced this,
Soka Gakkai.
I don't know, he chanted this.
Nam-myoho Renge-kyo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said that it's all directed toward obtaining some material benefit.
Yeah, they chant for a purpose.
They chant. Whatever you desire, it will come to you, and then you establish the relationship with,
Yeah, it's a purely materialistic.
There is not much.
I actually, before I became Krishna conscious, I met Nichiren Shu. I went to visit their establishment in Boston. They were like on the street. They just asked me to come to, to go somewhere. And it was not really impressive. I was looking for something more mystical when I was a kid, because I already studied Hinayana, Mahayana myself, the Lotus Sutra, the Tibetan Book of Death.
Yes.
All the like Be Here Now, the Purple Book, yoga. I was doing yoga with Iyengar yoga. I was like really already tuned up. In Newbury Street in Boston, there was a store. They had like all these weird books from Nepal and translated to English. And for me, it was like reading this really unreadable, intellectually
you cannot understand,
intellectually not accessible, material. For me, it was like fascinating,
Of course.
So when I read the Bhagavatam first time, it was also I couldn't read it properly because I didn't have enough English still, but I was reading Bhagavatam loud. And try to understand, gradually getting more English soaked in, start more understanding. So I learned my English in ISKCON.
But let me ask you, Radhika Raman Prabhu, amongst all this experience, what attracted you the most to being Krishna consciousness? Why you thought this one is superior to the other, or there's some taste, there's something? What was your take in that time?
But first of all, I couldn't really glue myself into material society somehow.
Yeah, that's everybody.
Like I had a quite successful little business in Connecticut. Like I made $5,000-$6,000 a month, and I think the last contract which was for several months was like for $15,000. Rebuilding, I was engaging other people. I was doing painting jobs outside inside. I was making money.
But you were not.
But I was not really
a materialist.
I was really fascinated, for example, by Dali at that time. The transcendental Toreador paintings, the persistence of memory, the clocks, and his way of understanding. I was getting into this, something which would transcend, and that was fascinating to me. So I was in the last job I had, I would do weird photography. I would fast for like 5 days. I remember waking in the morning and they had this barn and I would do yoga there. And then I would sit there for 3 hours in Zazen, all night in Zazen. And then wake up in the morning and then start looking all the weird things, like getting on your own LSD or something.
Yeah.
I didn't need any alcohol or drugs. I was like literally
naturally
crazy.
Spirited.
I was like out of my mind, literally.
So, but what Krishna consciousness provide you this? What
really attracted me was the relationships. They are challenging relationships.
Sure.
Because, I had a lot of authority immediately to face. First, when I joined the temple, there was a temple president that I didn't like. Literally, I hated this. I couldn't stand him sitting on so I prepared questions that he would
to defeat him.
He was it was completely out of any success whatsoever. So, and I got thrown out of the temple at that time. But then when I came back, there was a challenging, to surrender myself to the devotees in a kitchen. And, for example, when I was living outside after I got thrown out, I stay in a flower shop owned by the devotees. I sleep on a porch they were the benches for rolling flowers. I had a job of selling flowers. And in the basement, there was a friend from Berklee College of Music, drummer, with a studio. So we were jamming all night, or I was I was selling flowers, and I had the devotees bring me prasadam every day, muktavanya for a year. So that's kind of thing imprints into your heart. You never can forget that, like how they took care of you every day. I was a weird guy. I was like literally out of my mind pretty much, and I didn't, it was like I was not really fitting in. I was not part of any particular symmetry
But
inside
somehow
of
the
the
devotee took
society.
nice care of you.
But they really, they warm up to me, and I love kirtan. When I went to the temple, I increasingly fall in love with the kirtan, and I start to love the deities. First Subhadra, then Nityananda. And then I was walking around the temple with like a lamp in middle of the night, doing the artics to all the pictures, weird stuff like this, like just I was slowly entering into more, socially acceptable format of myself.
Amazing.
And Naranja Swami, he his heart is made of gold, so,
Yes.
and the devotees, they really took care of me. They were very stern, very strict with me. And when I was start doing real service, immediately everybody warmed up to me, like, it become more sweeter. And I understood that I started having family, actual feeling of connection with someone. And the philosophy to me also, understanding that staying in a temple in association of devotees, then experience the contrast of material energy outside. That gives you immediately quiet. It builds, increasing build up of the conviction, that you're with the on the right path. I have as a musician all my life through and through, and I always have the inclination to make some kind of music. There's a period when I was just really doing kirtan, and I didn't touch guitar or anything. Like I was. In fact, I used to play this instrument called the stick, Chapman stick, which is played in King Crimson by Tony Levin. This 10-string bass and guitar in one piece, tapping like this. I had 2 of those. Then I moved to the temple. I had 1 left, and I had to promise Narajana Swami I've never touch it again. But then later, Maharaj told me, but you didn't promise me to play guitar, so you can play some guitar still.
Because it still does bhajan.
But I never actually break that promise. I did. Right. I get rid of the stick, and I never played again. And later on in Japan, after I get married, I start, doing music more seriously, composing music, writing music, having some bands, and doing some studio work for some musicians in Japan.
Nice. How is today's situation for you in Japan? How you feel yourself? How many years you have been spending here? So
30 I
years?
went to 91, so what is it?
So yeah, it's a long time.
91, 85, 34 years, right?
Yeah, it's a long time. So you speak fluently Japanese now?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I still.
No, I cannot believe
I still live on a.
No.
I have the reluctant mechanism in me to not speak Japanese because, of course I do understand Japanese a lot more, but I never I never went through constructive effort to learn. I don't know. It's a kind of like it's a organized bipolar disorder or something.
You can get marred by not speaking Japanese.
No, because I actually still distributing books, and I go on the street.
Same.
And I follow the same routine. I chant very carefully. I read every half an hour, and I talk to people with the same mantras, and I stay away from the social exchanges of talking to people too much.
Right.
Getting into the point.
Because if you speak Japanese, then you will enter into a different mode.
Well, actually, for most people, it's better to learn. And I know a lot of people who live in Japan for a long time, and they need a therapist after a number of years.
Why?
Because Japan is fundamentally completely in contrast with our upbringing to live within the realm of self-identity.
No, explain to me again. I don't understand. When you mean, what is the identity?
Self-identity, your individuality.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
In Japan, it's not allowed.
Oh, you cannot.
No, in
you
Japan,
are part of the group.
You are part of your collective thinker. You have to think in a group. And then
you have to think what is the benefit for everybody else.
No, you don't allow yourself to think independently. And on the street, when you meet a group of people, you immediately start with the leader. And if you convince him, then next 3 people automatically buy the books automatically right away, just
because he purchased
on obligation.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, but would you say that they don't have independent thinking themselves?
Well,
Or they're programmed to think?
Well, eventually I start to realize that because of so many people living in Japan, it's the amount of massive amount of human beings in small space.
Yeah.
If you would have too many independent people walking around, it would be massive chaos.
Yeah.
So I think that there was a natural social embedded mechanism in architecture, the social architecture, that made there was a naturally established social system when people conform to a group that would be organized and controlled by a certain discipline.
But for example, you have different party, or you have opposition party, or I don't know, how does it work here? Because in Europe, at least, or in Italy, we are highly individualistic people. Means, people think themselves or their family, and then I don't care what's going on or whatever. First, me and my family has to be all right, and whatever it takes, I'll do. And second, they think about I am Italian. But maybe Italy, because it's a country where many different culture, the Turk, the African, the German, the American, everyone goes through Italy. So their mind is not like, okay, we're open to everything, but they have highly individual personality.
Well, essentially all human beings are individual.
Of course.
And in Japan, you also you define everybody as an individual, but in a social structure, inside of the social structure, especially when you live with the neighbors and you live inside of the society, there is a very strict protocol of
respecting everybody.
They actually, the one thing is that there's no really there's no really social community structure. The Japanese people, they live a lone life. The families, they live isolated. They don't meet many people. In general, of course there are exceptions, and you have also some friends bonding and all this stuff. But essentially, really, like there's no living in a community like in America, and the whole street is everybody's together. Like everybody is like hugging.
In Italy.
In Japan, there's no any hugging. Anybody. Don't touch me.
Yeah.
So it's a very particular culture, and if you not understand, if you're not really brought up in this culture, I always realize that I don't want to become Japanese. I don't want to mute into something which I'm not, because I would realize I would lose all the things which is given by nature.
Yeah.
And also I would not be happy. There would be no personal acceleration of anything, I would become like some kind of cologne of something. And
sometimes they look like a robot, actually.
Exactly. So, I made a clear determination, I am not a Japanese, I'm gaijin. I am an alien ship here. So, just take me or leave it. Take it or leave it, And, so a lot of my friends, they get married, they try to, mix with the culture, try to become part of the Japanese families. And when they are like 40, they're getting divorced and they're getting literally psychotic, bipolar disorder, schizophrenic tendencies, and they need a therapy because it's a.
But let me ask
you live alone,
But let me ask you one thing. For example, Italian family, we're all together.
Exactly.
Every Sunday we go to the grandfather's house where 30, 40 people, uncle, auntie,
I remember
the kids were playing football, we're eating. The grandmother give you a piece of bread, put some tomato on top, put some cheese, you eat, go, hello.
Exactly.
But, how does it work here? I don't understand. The family, they don't get together?
They have a once a year, they have like...
Only once a year?
They have,
Christmas.
They have a Christmas also, but Christmas is not really, that's not really for them. They have the period in late summer, Obon, when actually they have 1 week free
Holiday.
and everybody goes back to their families, like to mama's house.
Oh, okay.
They travel. It's a very great time to distribute books because everybody's in transit. You meet
Moving
people.
around.
You go to Akihabara here, and you meet people from everywhere.
And they're happy to.
And everybody's money, so they can buy books or.
But I saw one festival. We went on the river where they're shooting this. What do you call it? This rocket. For 2 hours, and the river, and everybody come with a blanket, and they all sit. The whole family have picnic in the evening.
Fireworks, yeah.
Yeah, fireworks.
That's a very.
What is it called? Famous festival, right? Is it springtime?
No, fireworks are always through the whole summer.
Through the whole summer, yeah. So, but
every Saturday,
everybody come with a dress, a kimono. The men come in the dress in their regular.
No, that's another special time when there's a time when everybody you see a kimono wearing on the street.
Yeah.
That's when they are couples. They become 18.
Oh, okay.
So they go first time with the girl out.
Oh, okay.
So they wear a kimono as a gesture to Japanese culture.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. But if you were to stop as a young guy, let's say we go to the gym every day with Bon Maharaj and we see so many young guys, but we don't see that they're talking to each other or anything. They're just, each one is doing his own thing.
No, I'm just telling you, the culture is extremely...
They're like, why they're separated? I don't know.
It's a very, there's a...
I don't understand.
It's a funny thing. You in Japan, you don't ask you, how are you?
Yeah. Why?
If you don't say that,
So
how are you? Why you ask
doing?
me, how are you? This, they're like, that's
who are
not
you?
really...
Who are you to ask me
No,
that?
it's not like that. It's not like, who are you? No, it's just, it's not needed.
Okay.
I'm
fine.
Like I went to visit my house of my friend, and the grandmother was visiting, and I bring her I knew that she was going to be there, old lady, and I bought a bunch of, like a chocolate collection.
Nice.
And I was giving her chocolate. She said, I don't need this.
I don't want it.
I don't know. Literally, I don't need it.
I know you don't need it.
And I was like,
one piece,
what kind of family is this? I was telling my friend, you all like this? Like, what is it? Like, I gave you a gift to your grandma, and she said,
don't need it.
I don't need it.
I don't want it.
So that's kind of hilarious, actually.
Yeah.
So that's Japanese culture.
I see.
I went. I was going for a couple of years for ceremonies of this Shinto, a very, very unique Shinto cult of people who are going to waterfall ceremonies. They give you a white kimono with the white shoes, and in the middle of winter, like November, December, January, you go underneath a waterfall. And
Cool.
Mitama, in Japan, Mitama is the soul, or is in here. It's not over here.
Why?
The idea of, martial art, like karate,
Yeah.
they believe the soul is actually in
the
the
stomach.
places of your
Belly.
That's the
Belly button.
Muladhara chakra,
Yes.
or they call it Mitama, or it's the sacrum area, right, in yoga. So, and they learn to become warm underneath of the waterfall.
Wow.
And then after they worship the water, they offering food to the waterfall, the personified person who is the demigod there, and also they offer food to the deities there. So I saw one of the most amazing, unique, like the behavior of internal Japanese, culture, like the ancient Japanese culture in its elemental state,
Amazing.
like worshiping, and there's a guy plays drum, it's kind of like, it looks like one of those Indian drums, open, short like this, and he makes, and he's like pumping on it, like, and they have, it's not really symmetrical rhythm. It goes from pianissimo to huge bangs, and then everybody's like, woo, 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 oi, 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 oi. And and they go to the water, and they keep like communicating with the
divinity.
It's like ancient, native Indians in America. They had a really unique, but you see the Japanese, that's really amazing. And it's like a really great experience, I went alone many times. I went to also with one of my friends who was teaching yoga with me, and they told me at the beginning, your mitama is closed. You don't have no open mitama. So you have to work on yourself to open your mitama, to open your soul. And they say your friend is already open, for example, right? And
They can see it. They can perceive it.
well, I don't know. It's just there was actually a very small occult, and I went there literally for the experience of the social understanding of the history of Japan,
Right.
and how I can understand Japanese people more internally, so I have to learn from this. And it was incredibly lucid experience to go through that. And then they were worshiping also fire afterwards. So there was they set up the pyre. So after you get really frozen cold, you in front of fire,
hot.
Not hot, but you get warm, and then you take the food that you offer. They offering all this thing there. They eat that, but they also drink alcohol afterwards, or smoke cigarette afterwards.
God.
Some of them, So there was a kind of thing, it's exactly like the elephant. We in our culture, we understand the elephant bath. You go through this amazing awakening experience, and then you drink all booze. And I get to understand, that their idea towards the gods that they are one of us. We are also gods. So they go there with the attitude to befriend
with the gods,
to befriend the divinities who are there,
Yeah.
And so I was interested. I was fascinated by this, and the leader didn't allow me to go with the main group because I was just too weird, or not really. I didn't spoke Japanese enough, and he didn't want me to influence
interfere.
So he organized with the family of my friends. They organized private waterfalls every month. So for about 2 years, I was going on a private trip. There's no alcohol because of me. And, so of course I had to pay about Ichimaen every time. Once a month, Saturday, I would go. After I would dress deities here, I would go to a waterfall ceremony. But I came back charged up with this amazing
experience.
Purity from nature. You got a real...
the waterfall and...
Yeah. And it's also, it helps you to appreciate our culture.
Of course.
It gives you some kind of extra vitamin.
Absolutely. Radhika Raman Prabhu, let's talk about your production of music, because you give me access to your page in your Instagram, and you told me I can play some of the music in Radio Mayapur. So I listened to some of them. I really enjoy the music.
Oh, thank you.
So, and tell me about these texts you wrote, which are very spiritual. You spoke about awakening yourself and many different things. So
I think
of course you are coming from the background of music, so music is part of your life, and I don't think at any point of time you will give up this feeling of producing music, because it's part of what you are. It's the fabric of your being. And of course, for us as a devotee, we are bhajan, kirtan, music, sound, mantra is all part of our life as well. So, but you are producing this music, which is very nice.
Oh, thank you.
And so tell us a little bit about this.
Well, the latest production, I have a CD which I produced, recorded in regular studios in Japan with Matthew Hindorp, who is the producer of Myriad in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a drummer originally, so I play drums on that original CD, and I also play guitars, and I sing. And he also sings. And we had a couple of bass players working on that album with us. And we had one keyboard player from America. His name is Jonathan Harrington, and he's got a new name, Jagannath Mishra.
Nice.
He lives in California. He was 18 years old when he discovered him in Boston.
Wow.
I took him to Japan for Sankirtan, and then we just
nice.
And so there was a kind of a devotee album, but very serious. We went to studio for 3 months every day.
What's the name of the album?
That was called Rupa. And Sonic Tonic was the name of the album, and the band's called Rupa. There was only one CD at the time. I sold I sold maybe over 150,000
Wow.
CDs in Japan for last how many years? Because I was distributing just that only CD on the street to people.
Nice.
I was always thinking, okay, the other music that I do, I'm not gonna just, I want to produce it properly, like with some kind of remuneration, getting with labels or,
Right.
And so, I have recently, I was working, Raja Kishore actually came from America, and he married this half Japanese and Serbian girl. Her name is Shama.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a singer. And Raja Kishore, the 108 guitarist, he came to Tokyo several times, and and I know him from the time when he was working with Shelter, because at that time I was like, nibbling on the idea to get involved with Raghunathan to something. But actually my upbringing as a musician is very different from hardcore. Even though I love this, I really loved hardcore, social, the revolutionary, I remember when Raghunath brought like the complete accumulative number of guests for his Sunday afternoon gig in Philadelphia. He brought like 35 people into temple, and we had a kirtan with them. That was like literally maybe the best kirtan that I had in my life. People who never really experienced Krishna consciousness directly in temple, but they were so driven like this, with this authentic, natural spirituality and desire. There are kids like 16 years old kids, they coming, underage kids, to hardcore shows in America, So that was for me, even I was a drummer for the Krishna Fest for a little while in DC, Gunugrahi Swami. And so we met with Kamal Krishna Goswami there also. He was a resident there.
Of course.
And so we played on a mall every day. Hare Krishna, Mahamantra, drums, guitar, bass.
Nice.
This terrible band. And but ecstatic, Krishna conscious experience, of course. And so I met, Raghunath. He just joined, and they had they go into the hardcore shows at night to looking for kids to become devotees, And they bringing these really amazing young kids, the hardcore preaching in America was really, really, really special.
Now they're doing this Wisdom of the Sages, which
I know. I'm listening to that. It's very cool. Raghunath,
they're coming to Mayapur.
Yeah. I know Kostiba. Me and Kostiba, we were actually managing the temple. He was the temple president. I was his assistant.
In New York?
No, in Boston.
In Boston,
he was the TP president for about a year.
Yeah.
And Kostiba and, in book distribution, we were on books, on the tours together.
Very deep, very nice devotee, very great realization.
Yeah,
very
Tamal Krishna Maharaj's disciple.
Yeah, he's my friend also. Okay, in conclusion now, we are taking a lot of your time, and we want to send you to sleep also in the night. So what is your message to Radio Mayapur? People are listening to our podcast. Give us the final message. What would be, or let me ask you, if you would go back when you were a little, as 5 years old, do you have any regret? And little Radhika Raman, what would you say to him?
I think that every person should be honest to himself. Just like, we know from our philosophy that Satyam, truthfulness, is the only thing which works in Kali Yuga, really, And you cannot accelerate with anything in life unless you're honest and sincere about it. Whatever it costs pain, or if it's over-emotional or under-emotional. But if it's true, and if it's real, and if it's part of you, then it's part of something which either needs to be purified, and you have to define the internal version of that. But ultimately, you have to be authentic. And my songs, my music, after all these years of doing things in temples and practicing Krishna consciousness, I really would like to deliver some a form of spiritual entertainment where people can find inspiration to or motivation to look within themselves internally and try to define the world creatively outside of the generic domestic very unattractive actually place we have now, with this
Right.
whole madness going on with
Right.
wars and
Right.
increasing bureaucracy and all the impurities of Kali Yuga, emergefulness of, confusion of sexuality and people who, all this madness going on, I think that, as a Krishna, when we practice Krishna consciousness, what we want to see in young people, that they're really honest and that they, they fight for themselves, for their future. And ultimately they're realizing they have to fight for their spiritual future. So if I can create bridges with art, for them to get inspired, to consider, to accept our philosophy, in a way, I write poetry, I write lyrics, which are all kind of giving a strong impetus, or like giving protagonists to wake up. Jiv Jago, it's a whole story. We have to wake up from sleeping, slumbering, in material energy. And I was working with some AI, assistants to my music, doing some in painting into stuff that I do with analog instruments, and I want to reinterpret these versions of this music into a live performances.
Nice.
So that's what I want to do. That's my direction, and I want to maybe cultivate. I have been selling a lot of CDs with Instagram, and I have some bunch of fans on Instagram which are interested in this music. So I think that if I start to play live, I can bring people into the arena of some kind of form of self-realization, that we can bring people into a practicing spiritual life, bring to the Krishna consciousness.
How you define success?
I think success at the end of the day is if you really, really feel happy. And for us devotees, if you have family of devotees that you can bond with, that becomes the real happiness.
Nice.
I think that, we all, I'm a Grihasta, so, I think that it's important for me to be self-sufficient. So understanding my future, that I have to take care of that. But simultaneously, we have to really depend on the association of devotees deeply, have like in confidence to feel that you can depend on devotees, that you have you connected to the family of devotees. We I think that with the increasing nature of this age, there's going to be troubles in future, more and more by the influence of the age. So we're going to have to become more more strict and more stronger in our practice, in our sadhana perhaps, and exercise more gratitude to anything good we get from the devotional association, and to have a lot of forgiveness, sense of forgiveness for things that that they're not perfect.
Of course, nobody's perfect.
Stuff like that,
All right, I like to thank you so much for being
Thank
with
you,
me
Gangaji.
tonight.
Thank
It's
you.
been a great pleasure to be with you. That was
Thank you.
overdue. And I hope that you will come in Mayapur and visit us and visit our beautiful studio also.
You have a studio in Mayapur?
We have a studio in Mayapur.
Wow.
Radio Mayapur has a studio with camera and recording and stuff.
Recording?
Sure.
Yeah. You have enclosure studio, real studio?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Thank
I know
you.
this. There must be some secret people living there. I know that.
There's a lot of secret people.
I know that Krishna Prema was there with his extreme.
Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks you,
Hare
Radhika
Krishna.
Raman Prabhu.
You're listening to Radio Mayapur with the best devotional, meditation, kirtan music, and inspirational podcast. This is Radio Mayapur.